Greetings, everybody. This is Serpentine451 here with Weeb Warriors Episode 8. Tonight is going to be a bit different because, well, I talked to Jordan, and he decided to turn in early tonight, so he won't be joining us, and Jay is on vacation, so he won't be joining me either. So you guys get more me. Oh, well, I guess it'll work out for now. It'll be one of the shorter episodes this week, so I will try to make things as concise as possible, and the more meat of the discussion that I want to present to everybody, mostly to the audience here, is just something to think about when it comes to the Otaku Soapbox question for this week. Now, we initially wanted to do an episode last week, but a lot of things, scheduling was an issue, so we kind of got mixed up, and I thought we would have a bit more time this week to actually catch up on everything, but again, scheduling was a bit of an issue on everybody's end, so oh well. Let's get to the show, shall we? Let's start with one of our big shows for this week, High School DxD. We always start with High School DxD because usually I'm the one consistently watching it as it airs, and we always know of our Jay's and Jordan's thoughts on it for sure. Jay likes to watch it in arcs. Jordan watches it when he can catch up to it. For me, the show itself is going pretty well with the rating game arc against Cyborg. The episode that leads up to the initial fights in this current episode for this week basically is more setup for the fight itself, explaining the rules of the rating game proper, so we won't have to have anything explained in this episode. And we also get to see Hades, Lord of the Underworld, in Greek mythology. And he's a giant skeleton man. That's fucking hilarious to me. But in this current episode, we get to see the fights in the rating game. First, we have Kiba versus one of Cyborg's Knights. That was a good fight. Then we had the two Rooks, Roswaisa and Koneko, fighting the Rook and the other Knight of... the other Knight of Cyborg. Those fights were pretty... Like, all the fights in this particular episode were pretty good. Even the fight Issei had against one of the bishops of that Cyborg had. And the bishop pretty much wanted to use her sex appeal to basically get Issei off his kilter and just drive him nuts. But the only way he won that fight was because she started taking off her panties first instead of the bra. And apparently in his mind, you take off the bra first. Good lord. But still, that episode in particular, for me, was actually pretty funny. And we also get to see Gasper be a good... He contributed to his fight against the bishop and... What was it? Was it another bishop and rook? Yeah, another bishop and rook. It was an awesome fight to see Gasper really push himself to actually be one of the men of the Rimri family. And it's awesome to see that with Gasper as a character. And then we got to see Akano, who was very powerful, get just steamrolled by the queen on Cyborg's side. And my lord, is that crazy to me. I mean, that girl is very powerful, but to have her just be destroyed in one shot, that is insanity to me. And then the last fight that doesn't happen, but it's going to happen next episode, we have Kiba, Zenobia, and Roswise basically fighting Cyborg themselves so they can give Issei a chance. And Zenobia was also in the fight that was with because she fought with Gasper. Man, she really put on all the stops in her fight as well. I got to admit, these episodes leading up to the big fight with Cyborg is going to be amazing. the show so far is going at a steady clip. I mean, I love this show. I love this series, and knowing so much as I do of this series, I cannot wait to see a lot of these things that I love about it so much get adapted for the future if it continues on. Because most harem shows I see really get the most adaptation meat. Well, some more so than others. And I think that's all I have to say with High School DxD Hero episodes 9 and 10. And then let's go to episodes 11 and 12 of Comic Girls. Now, the big thing that I can remember from episode 11, because this is the series finale of Comic Girls, in episode 12. So we got to see a lot of growth from Chaos-chan. And a few episodes back or so, we kind of speculated that there was going to be... the episode that we mentioned that the dorm was getting closed down, we thought there was going to be this big arc to save the dorm, which apparently there wasn't. It was everyone saying, well, this is going to happen, so we're going to make the best of it. And the one thing that I could take from episode 11 is that Chaos-chan actually pulls through as a mangaka and gets the first part of her day, her entry in a manga collection in. And it's amazing to actually see her progress as a character. And then in episode 12, we get to see her trying to finish the second part. And it's really tearing her up that she's not going to be seeing her friends when the dorm gets closed down. And she has this big struggle. She actually breaks down a bit. She couldn't really bring herself to actually finish for a majority of the episode. It's not until the girls leave and she begins to doubt herself again. And then her mother shows up at some point in the episode and kind of shows the matron with the intention of actually showing her friends as well baby pictures of the young Chaos-chan. And just seeing everybody move so far, especially the hot mess as Chaos-chan, having her actually be a great mangaka for at least the moment actually boosts her confidence very well. And I love that about this show. Even though this show is it's very funny at times, and also it's very heartwarming. And I know, Jay, you didn't like, you liked the Tsubasa Koyome ship. You want that to sail. It didn't sail, my friend. I'm sorry. I'm sorry so much, dude. I mean, a lot of us wanted that to happen, but it's not going to happen all that much. So I'm sorry there. But in all honesty, it didn't really need that to begin with. I think these four friends, these characters, just exhibited what it means to actually be a creative person. And that's what I like about it. And the one thing that I can appreciate with Comic Girls as a show that I really enjoyed, it's the one thing that I can appreciate coming as a creative spirit himself. Someone who takes so much pride in what he creates, taking so much time and effort into the things that you create. And that's one of the things that I can appreciate in this show. When Jay talked about it and brought it up initially, I didn't have anything to expect from this show. And Jordan, if you were here, especially with the topic that we're doing this week, well, I'm doing this week, it's more of a question more than an actual topic, but I'll explain more when I get to it. This show lived up to my expectations, and the whole reason I say that is simply because I didn't expect it to hit me in such a way. I mean, as someone who's very creative, I wanted to be someone that is of that pinnacle, of that peak in the creative limelight. So, in a way, I kind of saw myself as Chaos-chan. And in that sense, having her complete her initial goal, but in the end, didn't really get her series serialized just yet, just goes to show that she has still room to improve and grow. And that one moment where she actually succeeds will boost her confidence so much that she will have the drive to complete what she needs to do again. And plus, it's nice to see these girls at the end of the episode basically reuniting after a long while. And it's so satisfying. I mean, this is one of the better shows this season. I loved it. Jay loves it. Jordan at least appreciates it if he doesn't outright love it. And all in all, this was a good series for those of us who are creative in general. Next up, Hinamatsuri. This is another show that ends this week. And initially, all I can remember from episode 11 of Hinamatsuri was Nita was the focus of a documentary on the Yakuza. And this guy wanting to really just amp up the underground aspect, and Nita basically being the nice guy that he is, being the honest, straightforward guy, even though he's a member of the mob. And this guy basically did things in such a way that a typical Yakuza would do. It basically made things so scripted. It's funny in that way. So when the special actually airs, Nita's new boss and his older brother in the organization basically make fun of him for it. It is hilarious. But with episode 12, at the end of episode 11, we learn that Hina is lost in the woods with Hitomi and Kingo and another kid. I only remember one of the male kids' names because Kingo. An easier name for me to remember. But into episode 12, we have Hina showing her powers to Hitomi and her two male friends, thinking that they're going insane or delusional, but in actual reality, they're not going crazy. And the whole thing with Hina is trying to basically save themselves, save herself and her friends from an icy death, and going so far as to show off her powers to her friends. To do so is very showing to her as a character. And then you have her saying, "Oh, I'm tired now. I haven't been fed," which is a typical Hina thing to have happen. And so our three other characters in the situation basically have to feed her snow in the form of sushi rolls, which is kind of funny. And she has enough energy to actually create a sushi dish that a helicopter sees. And it's really funny. And the other half of the other portions of the episode is basically focusing on all the other characters just being themselves. And I find that the most interesting about this show. And then the good portion at the end of the episode is a 3-year jump. And we have Mao in China as a kung fu master with her psychic powers, and the rock guy from previous episodes coming in to learn how to fight using special effects, which is fucking hilarious. So Mao, now older and a badass, beats this shit. Like the girl that we see at the beginning of the first episode, yeah, that's Mao being a badass in China. So she finally gets the chance to actually be she gets the chance to go to Japan to see Hina for the first time, but the master of the dojo stops her simply because that she's a moneymaker for this dojo in particular. So she stays there to basically boost their morale and makes branches across the country. And so when she actually beats the challenge, which is a robot, and she destroys it by using her powers in line with her kung fu, the master was just shocked that she actually destroyed the robot. And so with utter amazement, she gets the chance to go to Japan with the rocker and another member of the dojo. So in the end, this episode pretty much culminates with everything that Hinamatsuri always presented. A lot of heart and a lot of comedy. And that's the one thing I can appreciate with this show. It lived up to my expectations when it comes to comedy, but I didn't expect it to have so much heart. Like Comic Girls, for example. I expected a Moe show to have some heart. I mean, that's something to go off of. However, I didn't expect Hinamatsuri to have a lot of heart in its characterization, especially with Anzu. And it makes me want to actually see the source material that Hinamatsuri comes from, which is a 4-panel manga. I can only assume is the correct case, but in all honesty, I want to see more of Hinamatsuri. It's so good, and I expect it to just boost up in popularity. That's exactly what I want to see from a show like this. It has a lot of potential to actually be one of the better shows out there, and I really love that about it. And next up, let's go to what is also on the list. High School DxD Hero. Yeah, that would be Megalobox. Saving it for the end. So episodes 11 and 12. 11 is the fight with Burroughs. So Joe, along with Nanbu, basically planned to throw the fight again in order to save themselves from Fujimaki's intimidation and threats. And so the Gearless Joe gimmick was set aside for a moment until the fight actually progresses and Joe's gear gets destroyed, which that fight with Burroughs was intense. I really loved that fight in particular. And so with me, that fight was just rocking. It was so good. And then when Joe actually pulls the win without the gear and beats Burroughs with everyone back in his corner, it was so satisfying to actually have that last moment in the fight go through. And then when Nanbu actually sacrifices his other eye to basically save Joe's life, that was amazing. And Fujimaki basically says, you know what? You can't fault a guy who actually tore out his own eye to save himself and his protege, essentially. So tread carefully, because you're not going to get this chance again. And then this episode, episode 12, leading up to the fight with Yuri, because this episode, I think, is where the meat of what I'm going to say here. Yuri actually takes off his integrated gear, and he wants to fight Joe like a regular boxer. And I think that's the most interesting thing about it. So Yuri goes through the surgery. This episode mostly focuses on Yuri. And then the whole situation, like, we have this moment where he goes nuts. Yuri does. He goes nuts. And what Mikio basically says, he's been doing this for 5 days. And it's just mentally grueling. And plus, with an integrated gear, it would make sense. It's a gear that was part of his body. And so it would drive him crazy. It would drive him nuts. And essentially, the one thing that I could point out is that Yukiko wanted Yuri to be the example of Megalobox, to be this embodiment of her ideals. And so essentially, when she actually doesn't leak the information that Joe's ID was counterfeit, was fake, it shows to her that she actually really admires and respects Yuri so much to actually let the fight go through, even though she herself is against it. Because she and Yuri have this moment where he essentially says he's not going to face off against somebody unless, because he goes into the story where his trainer, another boxer, mentions to him that once you have someone, an opponent in your generation that makes you want to fight him from the bottom of your heart, you really shouldn't let that opponent go. And Yuri says, I finally found that opponent for myself. And that kind of shocks Yukiko in such a way that she goes to talk to Joe to let him know that Yuri's going to fight him without the integrated gear, which gets Joe excited because you get to see Yuri recover, and then he trains, and then the latter part of the episode, like before it ends, you have this nice rap interlude, basically talking about the two fighters themselves, intercut with different images of Joe training, Yuri training, everyone at the arena waiting for the fight to happen. Then you have Sacho, all the other characters, including Yukiko herself, really amp up the expectations that are leading up to episode 13, to the fight itself, and it's going to be amazing. Honest to God, guys, it's going to be one of the better fights of this show, if not of this year. I am guaranteeing that. And plus, we get to see Aragaki again. We get to see other fighters that Joe fought that show up, like, even though it's only Aragaki and Mikio, and Burroughs gets mentioned, because everyone in the world now really respects Joe for being someone who will fight tooth and nail in order, like, down to the last minute to actually be the real deal. And those of them, the opponents he fought, see him as the genuine article, and it's amazing. And then to have it all culminate in the final episode with the final fight, it's going to be spectacular. I guarantee that. So that fight hopefully will live up to expectations. And now I'll move on to the Otaku Soapbox topic for this week. It's mostly focusing on expectations, since we have two shows that are on the cusp of ending, we have shows that are on the cusp of ending or actually have ended. I wanted to basically talk about what expectations we have for these shows in particular. I initially had mixed expectations for a lot of these shows, and I think once we talk more about it, and once we have more discussions in particular about the show in general, like when we have all these shows ending at around the same time, which hopefully next season that will be the case. And plus, we also get to have more discussions of My Hero Academia, because I'm actually playing catch up with that show. Slowly but surely, I'm going down that route. But in my history with anime, I have a lot of mixed expectations. And one thing that I like to point out when it comes to my expectations with anime, when it comes to that level of quality, if it lives up to any expectation that I might have with it. One example I can say without beyond a shadow of a doubt, Pretty Derby, I didn't expect it to actually be that good. When I first watched it, I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those moe shows, like cute girls doing cute things. That's normally what I like. And with all these other shows, especially Comic Girls, Pretty Derby, and Hinamatsuri, I didn't expect shows that I had an idea of what they're going to be actually exceed any expectations that I might have with them. So if there are any shows that are currently out there or you've watched in the past, I'm mostly saying this for anime, but for anything like otaku related, when it comes to like a manga or a light novel or a visual novel or an anime, did it live up to particular expectations that you, our audience, had? And that's kind of the thing that I want to go for this particular podcast. I want people to really look at this, and sure, it's us guys gathering together to basically talk about anime every week when we get the chance to. But essentially, what I want to do is to kind of explore, especially with the Otaku Soapbox, I want to explore everyone's expectations, impressions, and hopes for future anime releases, for anything coming out of the Land of the Rising Sun. And that's kind of my hope. And even though we have a lot of shows that are ending, we have the next anime season slowly looming, so summer 2018 will actually be fun and exhilarating, and it looks like a lot of harem anime are going to be coming out this season, so I am looking forward to that in particular as one of the harem kings in this world. So all I want to say to everyone here tonight and who will be watching this episode, because it will be one of the shorter episodes that I know for a fact. not really going to be that long in the grand scheme of things, but I really hope that all of you who watch this show, who watch us talk about anime, regardless of whether you talk in the comment section or if you just want to have a dialogue with any of us individually, that's all perfectly fine. Because all of us here are fans of a certain medium that we love with all of our hearts, if not just something that we really enjoy. And if a show lives up to expectations, even though they may be low at first, that's my hope, is that hopefully we can actually see things on a much broader perspective. We can see things in a much grander way. So I will leave here. Leave the video here with just this question: can you name any anime that lived up to your expectations, or did you have an anime that exceeded your expectations, or did you have an anime that didn't meet your expectations? You let me know in the comments, and I will hopefully next week will pick out a comment if you choose to comment, and because that's all up to you folks. And I will basically propose it as, well, I'll mention the comments that I find the most interesting, the most compelling, and sometimes the most hilarious, at least to me. So everyone, I hope you have a good night, and I hope you guys take care. And hopefully you will join me, Jordan, Jay, and hopefully Brian in another episode of Weeb Warriors. Sorry if you only have me, and sorry if this episode was shorter than our usual episodes, but you can only get so much from just one dude. Love you guys. Bye.